And seeing everybody, no matter what profession, I still say it again. What's your title?
Physiatrist.
Physiatrist. A physiatrist, a psychiatrist, a homeopathist. I'll wrap them all up. Miracles like this that recreate themselves and redo it. That, it was the love for people, I think, at the core of it that gets you to be passionate about what you do and what you do and what you do. And, I don't want to turn this into a big tree-hugging love fest, but, if you all walk away today with a little more love in your heart for yourself and for everybody around you, I think it was a good day spent. And speaking of love and respect, there's a gentleman now, Edward Healey, who's recently joined the ACT team. And he's got his own child in his life that's made him go through experiences and really delve into learning things that assist the brain and the body and the mind in reconstructing, reinforcing and strengthening that came to us. And he's also helping us out with sponsorship. We're doing a sponsorship drive for this. Our goal is to get 20,000 copies of Daniel's book, the one that we gave out to you today, purchased by corporate sponsors, and working with other organizations that are already nonprofits, because this is just an idea right now. Today is the first step of it becoming a real tangible thing. And when it comes together with these other organizations, we're going to be able to put these books that are almost guides to recovery from an alternative route into the hands of 20,000 brain injury victims across Canada. And the funds that come from that will afford to do that and give that as a gift to them. It'll afford to do the ride across Canada that generates that awareness and media coverage in each city. It's going to go towards funding the documentary and completing that powerful documentary. It's going to go towards the study that we can apply these different holistic approach of all the modalities, traditional and alternative, working together to see if there's a scientific evidence and show it that the recovery process for people that, on one plane versus just the old paradigm, that we see the difference there. And to show that people like Daniel can coach others into walking again, talking again, thriving again. And so I'm going to ask Ed up now to share a little bit about his personal experience and what he sees as some of the first steps towards creating this sponsorship alliance.
I really didn't know what I was going to say, but I think I got a couple of doors open from all the experts that went before. Can I get some mushrooms? And being a product of the 70s, and I'm already into your energy, right? But true jokes. I first got involved with brain-damaged children when I was 19, back in 1960, where we volunteered to do physical manipulations of brain-damaged children that had severe mobility issues. And I did it because my girlfriend asked me to, so I could hang out with her, with the neighbor, and went on to form the first Parents Association for Brain-Damaged Children that wasn't recognized by the Canadian Medical Association. So the Doma Delicato theories were based on physical manipulations of pre- and postnatal positioning and exercises in order to reawaken the brain in the 90% that was asleep. They say we only use 10% of our brain. When you have damage, it's in that 10% that's awake. So the theory is through physical manipulation coordination, you can awake the other part of the sectors of the brain. And it worked. Many of them did not recover their mobility, but they went on to graduate university, right, many years later. And they would end up flying to Dr. Spitz's clinic in Philadelphia because of the lack of acknowledgement here for injections. And he was the doctor that created the brain shunt. And his daughter had brain trauma, and she went on to graduate from university in her wheelchair. So I've been working with this all my life. I have an autistic son. I'm also on the board of directors of the Family Council at CAMH. So we're all talking about mental health here, and CAMH is not at the table because we're all in pigeonholes. I'm going to get to the cultural assessment because I think that's where we're at. I'm lost for a moment here because I'm thinking on my feet. So my son has gone through, anybody here heard of Aerosmith School? It's a private school for kids with learning disabilities. Okay, it's the modern version of the Delicato theories of brain pattern therapy, where they do a lot of repetition in order to stimulate the brain. But what has evolved over the years, it's become more eye-hand. So a lot of tracing, a lot of clocks, a lot of computer programs like luminosity, but there's not the physical activity. So when I see Daniel doing his exercises, I'm not seeing him get fit. I'm thinking in terms of how much of his brain is being repatterned in order to recover the memory that's in the subconscious, right? And to be functional again in order to take in and manipulate new information. It's tremendously important to be physically fit, but I'm 62, and I see some people here a little younger there. As we get older, it's harder for us to get fit. So the objective is to be mobile. And if we're mobile, we're continuing to stimulate the brain and keep it awake. But it needs to be in coordinated activities, rather than the focus on being I'm as big, as strong, and as beautiful as I can possibly be. I'm a former athlete. My kids are athletes, and I don't know anybody who hasn't had brain trauma. So we're all talking about severe brain trauma here, but I know I've had so many concussions playing football, hockey. The only two sports I did where I didn't suffer a concussion were swimming and track. Came close in track. Right? My son took a baseball bat to the head when he was 6 and rushed to the hospital because kid was goofing around before the baseball game. He also wiped out on his bike, broke his collarbone, was knocked out for 3 minutes with a helmet on, same age. They treated the collarbone. Now, he's okay. He got 2,000 on his SATs and going to law school in England. However, what are the long-term effects of that? So when I'm sitting here, and I'm part of the sponsorship thing, so I'm going to segue because I'm an educator and an expert in communication as well. Done a lot of things. My poetry. I'm wondering about the long-term effects because I do so much work at CAMH, and CAMH is the Center for Mental Health and Addiction. So we're talking about addressing mental illness, but we're also talking about addressing addictions because so many, we were talking about our 30-day patterning dependency from psychotropics to painkillers to, everything else. So, but we tend to work in pigeonholed, and I see all these various discussions because I studied philosophy and religion before I went into theater, and I think it's a cultural issue. Well, it was the 70s, right? It's a cultural issue. I hate Aristotle because he made everything subject-object and the truth out there and absolute and unchanging. And of course, everything we hear today, it's about a self-defined truth in time, in space, and what we can do to get inside of ourselves, to know who we are, to be the best people that we can be. Right? So when we're looking at sponsorship, and we're a money culture, so when I look at everything having 4 athletic boys, the helmets are inadequate. The shin guards are inadequate. Everything is inadequate, and it's a consumer-based product. The bicycle helmets, I wouldn't let them wear when they were kids. They had to wear skateboarding helmets because they had coverage, or a hockey helmet. Because the bike helmets, styrofoam with a thin layer of plastic that doesn't cover here or here, it's just insane. no shock absorption. It's a nice marketing gimmick, you crash it, throw it out, buy another one, right? The consumerism in our safety fields is purely consumerism. There's not a lot of R&D. They aren't really preventative in terms of accidents. So there's a carryover in our treatments as well. If you go down to CAMH or you come down to, we all know about, I'm not going to say anything about St. Mike's. I was operated on here and it came out okay. If you go down to CAMH during the day, it's a beehive of activity. You go in the evening, you go on the weekends, nothing's open, nothing's going on, and the residents that are there have nothing to do. The cafes are closed. So it's an employee-run institution. It's not client-based institution, right? And same with hospitals. We just learned the article in the Star about stress on going into a hospital on the weekend, lead to a heart attack, because the services aren't as full or robust as during the week. So what we need to do is really focus in on a preventative and a curative platform. And because we're in a Western culture, a consumer culture, it takes sponsorship, right? And we plan to raise quite a bit of money in order to make those tools to communicate good prevention and the integration of treatments. And I'm really proud to see the traditionalists and the non-traditionalists having benefited by both over my years. I've had 8 or 9 operations, nothing on the head yet. Working together, bringing you information, but we need to get that information out there on multi-platforms, in multimedias, and in multi-languages. So the best thing you can do, because it is the world of communication, is get on Twitter, get on Facebook, send a letter to the newspaper, and ask your questions. Because the big concern I have living in a consumer society, brain trauma is sexy right now. We have the NFL players suing the NFL. All the NHL players, enough of them had died from suicide, brain trauma, depression, drug overdose, that they're looking into suing the league, right? And the research is going on. But we need to take it further to who we are. I mean, one of the reasons to fit in with that cultural thing is Daniel was able to break through the traditional Western cultural pigeonholes and limitations because he was so damaged he was written off. There was no like going to school where you're going to sit in your row and you're going to get, you're going to do math and science and history and geography, right? That whole thing. You're going to go into ordinary rehab and go back to your job. You were written off. You were in a permanent facility to be taken care of, right? So when you don't have those strategic pressures and pigeonholes and expectations by everybody that actually control you, what we've been hearing about here, breaking out of that, I'm just being a little more critical. You were all very diplomatic. But he had nowhere to go but in and then up. His only other alternative was to die, really. So, let's rock and roll, as we used to say, Anyway.